Something is seriously wrong with the bread sitting in your kitchen right now. Behind the comforting packaging and the cozy, family favourite slogans lies a hidden side of the UK bread industry that most shoppers never see, and that many manufacturers desperately hope you never question. Because the truth is uncomfortable. Some of the UK's most popular loaves are packed with additives, processing shortcuts, and chemical agents that nutrition experts have been warning about for years. And while these substances won't scream danger on the label, they can gradually chip away at your well-being. For many people, they're the hidden culprits behind gut irritation, chronic bloating, inflammation spikes, and long-term digestive discomfort. All from a food most of us grew up trusting. Today, we're exposing the truth. We're counting down 7 UK bread brands you should avoid at all costs, and revealing 3 genuinely safe, trustworthy alternatives every household should know about. Let's begin with the ones to avoid. 7. Hovis Soft White. For decades, Hovis Soft White has been one of the most recognizable loaves in Britain. It's the bread people grew up with, the one parents tossed into lunchboxes, and the one many families still reach for without thinking twice. The brand feels safe, traditional, familiar, the sort of product you'd never imagine posing any hidden risk. And that's exactly why so many people overlook what's actually inside it. Hovis markets its soft white loaf as gentle, wholesome, and suitable for everyone. But behind that comforting image is a far more industrial reality. To maintain its soft texture, long shelf life, and perfectly uniform shape, the loaf relies heavily on additives, flour treatments, and chemical boosting agents that don't fit the simple, everyday bread story most shoppers assume they're buying. One of the biggest concerns nutritionists raise is the use of bleaching processes and processing aids that never appear clearly on the front of the packaging. These methods help keep the flour bright and the bread irresistibly soft. But they also leave behind compounds that can irritate the digestive system in ways most people never connect back to bread. Former bakery workers have quietly admitted that some of these shortcuts are considered standard practice in mass production, even though consumers are rarely made aware of them. On top of that, Hovis Soft White often contains emulsifiers and strengtheners designed to make dough more elastic during high-speed factory baking. Several studies now suggest that some emulsifiers may interfere with healthy gut bacteria, contributing to inflammation and making bloating or stomach discomfort far more common than most bread lovers realize. Parents often attribute these symptoms to stress or diet, but sometimes the loaf on the counter is a bigger culprit than expected. And yet, millions of households still buy Hovis Soft White every week, never questioning why something so simple needs such a long ingredient list. It's marketed as comforting, but the manufacturing practices behind it tell a very different story. If this already makes you rethink what's in your toaster, brace yourself, because number 6 is sold as a healthy compromise. But what's hiding inside it is anything but. 6. Kingsmill 50/50. On the surface, Kingsmill 50/50 feels like a sensible compromise, half white, half wholemeal, and marketed as the perfect middle ground for families who want something healthier without giving up soft, familiar bread. Parents trust it, schools serve it, advertisements portray it as a balanced, everyday staple that fits neatly into a busy lifestyle. It looks harmless, almost wholesome. But behind that friendly packaging is a formula built less on nutrition and more on manipulation. What most shoppers never realize is that the softness, the long shelf life, and even the texture are all engineered using a cocktail of emulsifiers, dough conditioners, and processing aids that rarely make it into public conversations. Bakers who've worked in mass production facilities quietly admit that these loaves rely heavily on additives designed to speed up fermentation and strengthen dough that would otherwise collapse under factory conditions. It's bread designed for efficiency, not for your body. And this is where the problems begin. Several of the emulsifiers, commonly found in 50/50 style loaves, have been flagged in nutritional studies for their potential to irritate the gut lining and disrupt the delicate balance of the microbiome. Some research links them to increased inflammation and digestive discomfort in people who never suspect bread could be the culprit. The blend of refined flour and artificial enhancers can create sharp glucose spikes, leaving you hungry sooner and encouraging cravings throughout the day. For parents trying to keep their children's diets stable, or adults trying to manage weight, energy, or long-term health, this kind of engineered health halo can feel like a betrayal. And the real frustration? Many shoppers genuinely choose 50-50 breads because they believe they're making a better decision. They're doing everything right according to the marketing message, only to consume something far more processed than they realize. If that feels unsettling, it should, because the next bread on the list takes mass-produced additives and pushes them even further. 5. Warburtons Toastie. At first glance, Warburtons Toastie looks like the definition of a safe, familiar British staple. It's the loaf most people grew up with, soft, thick, reliable, and perfect for everything from breakfast to late-night snacks. The branding leans heavily on tradition and family values, giving shoppers the impression that this is a loaf made with care rather than shortcuts. For many households, buying Warburtons isn't even a decision, it's a habit. But that fluffy, cloud-like texture so many people love doesn't happen naturally. Behind the scenes, industrial bakers rely on an arsenal of processing agents, stabilizers, and dough improvers designed to make the bread look and feel fresher than it actually is. Food technologists have long warned that this perfect slice often comes at the expense of real ingredients and natural fermentation. What most consumers never realize is just how engineered some of these loaves truly are. Independent lab analyses and reports from former bakery employees have pointed to the heavy use of emulsifiers that act as structural enhancers. These compounds mimic the softness of long fermentation without requiring the time or quality ingredients it usually takes to achieve it. Some emulsifiers have been flagged in studies for their potential to disrupt gut bacteria, contribute to inflammation, and make bloating far more common. Parents in particular may be shocked to discover that the chemical processes involved in mass-produced bread can make it much harder for children and adults alike to digest compared to genuinely slow fermented loaves. And the consequences don't always show up immediately. Many people experience unpredictable stomach discomfort, energy crashes, or lingering inflammation without ever suspecting that a daily slice of toast could be playing a role. The sense of trust built by decades of branding makes these reactions feel completely disconnected from the product itself. But once you look at how these loaves are engineered, the link becomes much harder to ignore. If you think this was concerning, wait until you see what's hiding inside number 4. 4. Supermarket value. Loaves. Tesco, Asda, Morrisons. For millions of households across the UK, supermarket value bread is an easy choice. It's cheap, it's familiar, and it seems harmless enough. Most shoppers grab it automatically, assuming the only real difference between a 45p value loaf and a pricier branded one is the label. After all, bread is bread, right? And supermarkets certainly market it that way. Great value, family-sized, freshly baked daily. The message is simple and comforting. Even the cheapest loaf should still be perfectly safe. But what most people don't see is the industrial reality behind these bargain-priced loaves. To hit such low costs, manufacturers rely on aggressive shortcuts, ultra-processed flour, high-speed mixing, and rapid chemical fermentation designed to produce bread as fast as possible. The dough is often pushed through systems so quickly that it never develops naturally. And to compensate, companies add emulsifiers, stabilizers, and dough-strengthening agents. These additives aren't always harmful in isolation, but experts warn that the ultra-processed combination and how frequently people eat it can be a recipe for digestive trouble. Even more worrying is the quality of the flour itself. Cheaper loaves commonly use lower-grade wheat blends, meaning they require more processing to behave like proper dough. Some batches have been found with elevated residues of agricultural chemicals, along with bleaching agents used to make the flour appear cleaner and whiter. None of this is front-of-label information, of course. Shoppers simply see a budget-friendly option, not the chemical and mechanical shortcuts that created it. The consequences can be surprisingly harsh. Regularly eating these ultra-processed loaves has been linked to increased bloating, inflammation, unstable blood sugar, and even a higher risk of long-term metabolic issues. Seniors may notice joint pain or sluggish digestion. Parents often see it show up in their children as irritability, energy crashes, or stomach discomfort. And because the bread is engineered to be soft, airy, and addictive, it's easy to eat more of it than intended, amplifying every hidden risk. And if this worries you, the next item is far worse. But before we move on, this is a perfect moment to pause. If you're finding this eye-opening, or you've already spotted a bread brand your family buys, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep uncovering the truths most food companies would rather you never see, and ensures you don't miss the even bigger warnings coming up next. It's a loaf sold as an affordable everyday staple, but with issues serious enough that nutritionists repeatedly flag it as one of the most concerning breads in the UK. 3. Aldi's Everyday Essentials White Bread. Aldi's Everyday Essentials White bread looks harmless, just a cheap, simple loaf that families across the UK pick up without thinking twice. It's often viewed as a budget-friendly option, something to toast in the morning or pack into the kids' lunchboxes. At first glance, it feels like a smart way to save money during the weekly shop, but beneath that bargain price lies a set of problems most shoppers never hear about, and Aldi certainly isn't advertising them boldly on the shelf. The first hidden issue is the flour quality. Budget loaves are often made using grain treated with higher levels of agricultural pesticides. In some independent tests, residues have shown up in economy breads more frequently than in premium loaves. While these levels may be technically legal, they are far from desirable, especially when eaten daily. On top of that, this loaf includes additives banned or tightly restricted in parts of Europe, including certain bleaching agents and dough modifiers that help create a soft texture without proper fermentation. Then there's the process itself. To keep the price this low, the dough is often rushed through industrial speed production. That means almost no fermentation time, which is essential for breaking down gluten and making bread gentler on the digestive system. Without this step, many people experience bloating, heaviness, or discomfort, yet never connect it to the slice of toast they had that morning. For parents, seniors, and anyone with sensitive digestion, this can quietly take a toll over months or even years. Daily consumption of breads made with these shortcuts has been linked to inflammation spikes, unstable energy levels, and increased digestive irritation. And while no one expects gourmet quality from a 45p loaf, the health trade-offs are far more severe than most realize. It's not just cheap bread, it's bread produced in a way that prioritizes speed and profit over safety, nutrition, and transparency. And just when you think that's worrying enough, the next brand on this list takes mass-produced shortcuts to a whole new level. 2. Co-op Irresistible Sourdough. For years, supermarkets have convinced shoppers that sourdough is the healthier, more artisan alternative to ordinary sliced bread. The rustic packaging, the word artisan printed in soft fonts, and the promise of slow, natural fermentation give these loaves an immediate aura of quality. People pick them up believing they're choosing a traditional bread made with nothing more than flour, water, and salt. It feels premium, it feels safe, and it feels like the kind of loaf a nutritionist would approve of. But the truth behind many mass-market sourdoughs, including Co-op's Irresistible sourdough, is far from the traditional craft they claim to represent. Inside the industry, there's a well-known term for these loaves: sourfaux. Instead of being fermented slowly for 12 to 48 hours, many supermarket sourdoughs are rushed through production in a fraction of the time. Bakers report the widespread use of shortcuts like added commercial yeast, artificial acidity powders, and dough conditioners to fake the tangy flavor and airy texture that should naturally emerge from long fermentation. Some loaves even include emulsifiers and stabilizers, ingredients that have no place in authentic sourdough at all. This is where the danger starts to creep in. True sourdough fermentation breaks down gluten, reduces phytic acid, makes bread easier to digest, and naturally lowers the glycemic impact. But fake sourdough doesn't offer those benefits. Instead, you're paying extra for a loaf that behaves just like any other ultra-processed bread. Difficult on the gut, more likely to trigger bloating, and far less nutritious than the label implies. For people with sensitivity to modern bread, these hidden shortcuts can make symptoms worse, while the packaging continues to reassure them that they've made a healthier choice. And if this feels misleading, that's because it is. You're buying a premium-priced loaf that often isn't even real sourdough. But what comes next is even more frustrating, because the number one spot goes to a brand that takes ultra-processing to another level entirely. 1. Lidl Rowan Hill Soft Rolls and White Loaf. For years, Lidl's Rowan Hill range has quietly positioned itself as the budget-friendly, family-safe option. The packaging feels simple, the price feels appealing, and the branding gives off that no-nonsense bakery impression that makes shoppers feel like they're choosing something honest. But behind that friendly exterior sits one of the most problematic loaves in the entire UK supermarket market. This isn't just heavily processed bread, it's arguably the most ultra-processed of all, with some ingredients that nutritionists say simply do not belong in something as basic as flour, water, and salt. Most people assume these cheap soft rolls and white loaves are harmless because they look so ordinary. They sit right next to the more expensive brands, so it's easy to imagine they're all made to similar standards. But insider reports reveal an uncomfortable truth. The bread is engineered, not baked. The reason Rowan Hill loaves stay pillow soft for days, resist staleness unnaturally well, and appear freshly risen even after transport is because they're formulated with stabilizers, dough relaxers, anti-caking agents, and air-puffing additives that artificially inflate the loaf. In other words, it's not the yeast doing the work, it's chemistry. The consequence is a product that behaves nothing like real bread inside your body. Many dietitians warn that these loaves can cause sharp blood sugar spikes, leave you feeling strangely hungry shortly afterwards, and aggravate gut symptoms in people who normally tolerate traditional bread just fine. The high level of manipulation means your digestive system has to work overtime to deal with ingredients it was never meant to process in large quantities. For parents, the risk hits even harder. Children end up consuming these additives daily because the bread is cheap, soft, easy to pack, and incredibly tempting. Over time, exposure to ultra-processed food patterns like this has been linked to increased inflammation, poorer energy levels, and long-term metabolic strain. And perhaps the most unsettling part is that many shoppers never question why the cheapest loaf in the aisle somehow maintains the prettiest shape and longest softness. It feels like convenience. In reality, it's control. Engineered texture masquerading as quality. When the goal is to produce millions of near-identical loaves at breakneck speed, nutrition is rarely the priority. Appearance is. With number 1 revealed, we've reached the end of the 7 breads you should avoid. But don't go anywhere. The story isn't complete without the 3 genuinely safer, trustworthy alternatives that actually deserve a place in your kitchen. The 3 bread brands you should trust. After working through 7 of the most problematic bread brands on UK shelves, it's time for some good news. Because not every loaf is packed with shortcuts, hidden additives, and chemical tricks designed to stretch profits instead of dough. A handful of brands are doing things the right way, slowly, traditionally, and transparently, and they stand in stark contrast to the mass-produced loaves that dominate British supermarkets. The first brand worth seeking out is Gale's Bakery. Now, yes, it's more expensive than the pre-packaged loaves sitting in plastic on every aisle. But there's a reason. Gale's breads are made using actual fermentation. The long, slow process bread is supposed to go through. No fast-rising agents, no hidden conditioners, no artificial stabilizers that trick your senses. That extra time allows the gluten to break down naturally, making it easier on your stomach and dramatically improving flavor. When people finally switch to a real sourdough from a place like Gale's, they often realize something shocking. They weren't bread intolerant, they were additive intolerant. Next is the Village Bakery True Sourdough. Unlike many supermarket sourdoughs that rely on acid powders and commercial yeasts to fake the taste, these loaves are made with a genuine starter culture. No shortcuts, no chemical flavor enhancers pretending to be fermentation. This brand has won awards specifically because of its honesty, both in process and ingredients. If you want the nutritional benefits associated with real sourdough, this is one of the few supermarket available options that actually delivers what the label claims. And finally, there's Riverside Organic Farm Bread. This one appeals especially to parents and those with sensitive digestion. The flour they use is organic, free from pesticide residues that sometimes show up in budget loaves, and milled in a way that retains more natural nutrients. The ingredient lists are short, recognizable, and free from the "why is this in bread" chemicals you see in the cheaper brands. It's simple, clean, and genuinely nourishing. The kind of bread that doesn't need flashy packaging because the quality speaks for itself. These 3 brands share a common philosophy: slow processes, real ingredients, and absolutely no reliance on chemical manipulation to fake freshness. They taste different because they are different, and once you switch, it becomes almost impossible to go back to the ultra-processed options on ordinary shelves. At this point, one thing should be crystal clear. Not all bread is created equal. For decades, British households have trusted supermarket loaves without ever being shown what's really happening behind the scenes. The shortcuts, the additives, The inflated marketing claims, the hidden processing tricks that quietly chip away at your digestion, your energy levels, and your long-term health. We've just gone through 7 of the worst offenders, the brands that rely on chemical crutches instead of craft, speed instead of quality, and profit instead of transparency. And while each one comes with its own set of problems, the underlying theme is the same. Ultra-processed bread is designed for shelf life and softness, not for your well-being. But the good news, you're not powerless. In fact, once you know what to avoid, choosing better bread becomes shockingly simple. Look for loaves made with real fermentation, minimal ingredients, and traditional methods. Brands like Gales, the Village Bakery's true sourdough, and Riverside Organic prove that bread doesn't need 40 ingredients to taste good. It doesn't need industrial shortcuts to rise, and it certainly doesn't need additives banned in other countries to stay soft for a week. These small switches can reduce bloating, support gut health, stabilize your energy, and help you feel the difference between bread made quickly and bread made properly. Your body knows the difference, even if the packaging tries to convince you otherwise. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a loaf that made you feel awful? Have you tried switching to sourdough or artisan bread and noticed a change? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone else finally connect the dots. And if you found this breakdown helpful, share it with a friend or family member who still thinks bread is bread. It's not, and now you know why. Make sure you subscribe for more deep dive exposés, hidden food secrets, and eye-opening investigations the supermarkets definitely don't want you hearing, because this is just the beginning, and there are plenty more everyday foods with shocking truths waiting to be uncovered.